Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
If you've listened to this podcast at any point along the way, or different points along the way, you will know that I'm a big fan of getting out there and connecting with other connected people. Not worrying about what they do, stop trying to figure out where something is going. If you know somebody who's, I'll say successful, because connected people are generally successful. If you run into people who are connected, successful, have a conversation with them. The reason is that connected people are connected to lots of other people. That's why they're connected, but then they're connected to other high connected people. I know, say that 10 times fast. But if you stop and think about it, you want to surround yourself, especially if you want to be well connected, with people who have done a great deal of this. And so today on the program, I have Mario Brondani on the program with me, and Mario is he's a South African. He lives in Slovakia right now, and he's on a mission to connect with 100 super connectors, and then he is connecting those super connectors along the way. But anyhow, Mario, welcome to the program.
Hi, Frank. Thanks so much for having me. Grateful to be here.
So at this point, we're recording mid-November. You're at 69.
Correct.
You're doing well. I think when we spoke a couple weeks ago, you were at 61. So you're picking up in it. And I know you have others scheduled. But I guess my question is just what was the origin of this? At what point did you lose a bet? Somebody said, okay, you need to connect with 100 super connectors, or was it like, this is just something that's in front of me? Or you had a bigger end game? Where did this, maybe just start out with your background and then how this all came to be?
Absolutely. So I'll start off with a bit of my history. I started in marketing and sales consultancy. I've been doing that for the last 12 years now. And infamously having done 300 million in sales for the franchising sector and 2 Fortune 5 companies, I realized along the way, Frank, that I accidentally monetized 2 networks, right? The first one having done 10,000 cold calls to 4,000 franchisors across the world, naturally just connecting with anyone in the franchising game. And having enough conversations just builds you a network by itself. And I just started to, unaware to me at the time, make introductions for people, right? Second one, learning to do marketing, specifically Google Ads. And along the way, realized that Google Ads could have been used not only just for the fact of, getting a client and getting them a couple of clients, but also in network marketing. So I cold called 50 of the top network marketing earners as per a couple of lists that I found online, right? And I actually ended up working for 5 of them in 5 different companies, doing Google Ads for them in exchange to have a referral link in their company and putting everyone that they would introduce to the network marketing company under my referral link. Again, for the second time, accidentally monetizing a second network, right? I reflected 7 months ago from today on this process that for the last 6 years, I had actually been mistakenly unaware of the fact that I was actually connecting people, right? And I just really enjoyed doing it, having conversations, getting them to connected to what they were looking for particularly, and overall, just really enjoying the relationship building process of it. So I then realized that I really just was doing the sales and marketing as a learnable skill, right? And overall, my true focus was something bigger and greater. I didn't want to be the quote expert, unquote, of sales and marketing and be a consultant my entire life, right? So I decided to take on connecting a bit more full time, where I've eventually grown to doing about 30 hours of one-to-ones a week and between 12 and 15 hours of networking calls a week, right? And in the midst of this process, I just really trusted in the process that something would present itself to me. And lo and behold, I came across an epiphany 9 weeks ago from today, in fact, the 19th of November. I realized that super connectors themselves are like an acre of diamonds, right? Unpolished diamonds that have a lot of potential if you're willing to do a bit of work with them and help them, right? I also realized along the path that super connectors, even though they're connectors, a lot of them actually really work either alone or feel alone in their process because they're really
Right.
helping so many people, but they don't get much help back, right? So the longer I decided to meet with a couple of super connectors, I got to about five, heard five different stories, and realized, well, who's connecting the super connectors? Because a lot of them are doing it for themselves and for others, but no one's doing it for them, right?
Very
I
true.
then realized
Very, no,
exactly,
it's
and
very true. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt,
I
but I mean, it's
then,
very true. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I then realized, well, the best way for me to remonetize my network for a third time and on purpose was to add value to these incredible people that have, for years, if not decades, added more value to others than they did for themselves, right? Because my first networking strategy in the franchising game kind of died in COVID, essentially because a lot of them weren't prepared for the online world, about 80%. Even though some of them were, but most of my connections kind of died out when COVID started, you know? So
Right.
I also thought I wanted something that would withstand the test of time. And really, even as far as 4000 BC, in the stories of Babylon, they had the idea of people bartering and people connecting, right? And I thought, well, if those stories stood the test of time for people connecting and bringing stories from far and wide, well, why wouldn't a super connecting community of 100 not stand at least the next 55 years of my foreseeable workable future, right?
Right.
So I took these aspects into consideration and made the decision to build a community of 100 super connectors where I would be facilitating relationships on a first level and above and beyond, really not focusing on the transactional aspect of it. I don't want it to be transactional. I want it to be pure community and connection, collaborative focused. That's the goal above and beyond. So that's the story, should I say. And that's
Yeah.
how I got into it.
No, I mean, it's interesting because you're right. Um, Generally speaking, connectors are, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm never referred to somebody with, "Hey, here's Frank, help him." That doesn't happen. It's usually, "Hey, Frank, this is so and so. They need help. They're in job transition, they're started a business, whatever it is." And I don't have a problem with that. But like, as I've indicated, the flip side's never there. That, okay, yeah, this person could help you. Um, and that's the first challenge. And then the second challenge is just trying to figure out, well, who are the other connectors out there? Because I'm not, and I do meet people. Yeah, obviously, you asked me to introduce you to people, and I think I introduced you to about a dozen people. I don't know to what extent you've had conversations with them, but there are people I consider to be super connectors. But even amongst that core of people, some are more super than others. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
We before we hit record, we were kind of just talking about the whole dynamics of you put 100, you find 100 leaders from 100 different communities and put them in a room. Somebody's going to lead those leaders. Not everybody's going to lead, and there'll be some people who
Mhm.
will just kind of push towards the back. And it's the same thing with connecting. You're going to run into people who who are real connectors, who are connectors of connectors, and then other people who are just kind of connected in their own little community. They're big fish in their small ponds, but they're not willing to be a big fish in a bigger pond, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the joy of having different sized super connectors within one community and taking a step back, I get that not everyone is going to want to lead.
hmm
And I think in a lot of their positions, they're having either chosenly or forcibly chosen to lead, right?
yeah,
So I remember one of the most interesting pieces of dating advice that I've ever heard off of the internet was the easiest way to get a date is just to get them to not think about the date, like take care of everything, right? I, in a weird way, thought the same thing for super connectors, right? Imagine someone that's having to control a community, having to manage all the calls, having to have dozens and dozens of one-to-ones a week. And then you put them into some place where they can just participate. They don't have to figure everything out. They can just
yeah,
be themselves and enjoy the art of having a conversation without strings attached behind it, right? That's at least the level of quote dating freedom in the super connecting community that I'd love to
yeah,
create for everyone. A place where they can just step back and shine as people, not as super connectors, because all of them will have that in common. We know this, right?
yeah,
But overall, there's a lot of super connectors that still need something, right? Like a lot of them, yes, they connect, but that usually was founded behind something else, usually lead generation towards something, either a platform, either their own business, or even for some form of a project or platform, right? So giving them some freedom to just step back and have some time to really connect with others that have that same giving spirit as they do, where they don't have to be in control, but they can just kind of go with the flow. I think a lot of them will appreciate that.
yeah. It's a metaphor I'll use has to do with cooking or having a restaurant, right? If you have a restaurant, you are spending your days and nights serving the people you serve, and seldom are you sitting down for that enjoyable meal where people are serving you. And so super connectors are in many ways like restaurant owners. They're so busy serving their clientele, their people they're connecting, that they don't have time to enjoy other people's cooking or being waited on, if you will. And that's it's it's subject to burnout, really, um,
Yeah.
potentially burnout, and I don't know. I think what you're doing is there's a lot of potential there. Um, you know, I guess the question I have is how do you determine if somebody's a super connector? Because
So I have,
when you originally approached me, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm a super connector. You know, I can't see the water I swim in, Mario.
yeah, absolutely. I have a short and then a bit of a longer response for this, but the basic definition that I tell people, because I get this question, if not every call that I do with people, right? What do you define as a super connector? Well,
hmm
essentially, someone who's actively monetized their network. That's my basic answer.
Okay.
Now, then I've essentially broken them down into five separate types of super connectors, right? Or at least that's what I'm looking for in my community. But overall, I think every type of connector will fall into one of the five.
Right.
And I'll name those briefly. The first is what I believe you fall in. And as a caveat as well, just before I explain them, it's not a one size fits all, right? A
Sure.
lot of super connectors, they are actually maybe two, three, or four of the types, right? They could be a mix match of them all. Yeah.
Right.
Kind of like yourself. And you'll see a lot of what you're doing into the types that I'm explaining. But essentially, the first one is a community super connector. Those that have put a bunch of people together that have active participation in the overall network, right?
Yep.
Easiest example is a networking group, a networking community, etc. Second one would be a platform super connector where they haven't created a networking opportunity or a community in the way that people are getting together on a call, but they're using a tool to better their life in various ways, right? The third one would be a content or influencer super connector, right? Some of them have podcasts like yourself. Some of them have other forms and channels that are actively participated in, which is a key point in towards all of that. I feel like a lot of people can have 25,000 LinkedIn connections, but nothing happens with them. They don't even know
Yeah.
maybe 1% of those, right?
Yeah.
So just a caveat on that. The fourth type would be an investor super connector. I found that a lot of investors that have large portfolios just naturally know tons of people, and they're actually also very willing to help others and connect most of the time because that's what they do most of the time, right? And then the final one, and people have different terms for this, but my simplest term is a professional connector, right? A professional super connector, someone that dedicates full time to connecting people, right? Those are the five. These are how I define them. And this is how I essentially look and vet people while I'm having conversations. I look at a bit on the things that they've done, what they're currently doing, and a bit of their vision for the future.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, you're right. There are several there that I fall, not all, but there are several that I fall under, um, and I don't know that there's anybody who touches them all, and maybe that's not a good thing. To
Yeah.
be a jack of all trades with respect to connecting. Um, well, let's talk about the end game. What's the end game of putting this together? Just your kind of your vision for this collective of super connectors.
Well, my goal for it is to be able to touch 1 million lives in the next 12 months. I am in the works of getting a platform together by co-collaborating with other super connectors that will allow a general super connector to plug in their contacts, their connections, their communities,
Right.
and not only promote more deal flow for all the entrepreneurs in those communities, but also allow a fundamental problem to be solved, which is what we touched in the beginning, to help super connectors essentially value a bit more of the network that they have, right? To
Right.
monetize it successfully and efficiently. This is the overall end game, at least phase one and two. Above and beyond that, then, Frank, it's to really see how destiny will plug it in for me, you know?
Yeah.
I honestly think that if you're helping others, life will help you back,
Yeah.
right? The law of abundance, the law of reciprocity. So I'm just really trying to help 100 super connectors. And from there, I believe great things will happen for them and for me.
Yeah. No, I agree. Um, how can people help you? I guess trying to wrap up here. How can people help you um, get a hold of you? Both those questions that will probably come up.
Great. So I'm easily accessible on LinkedIn under Mario Brondani. I'm sure you'll leave a link
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. Most people listening are driving in a car, so they rely on the notes anyway. So yeah,
Fantastic. So that's my easiest way. My ask of you all would be super connectors. I want to help as many as I can. And depending on when you're listening to this, I'm either still getting to the 100 or have already achieved the 100, but I'm not going to stop there, right?
yeah.
I'd love to help as many as I can. So any super connectors that are even listening to this, or if you know a super connector, please make an introduction.
Well, Mario, I appreciate getting to know you. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Frank. I just want to give a small shout out to Frank as well. For all of those listening might not know, at least my experience that I had when I first met Frank. I've met a bunch of super connectors, as you've all heard up until this stage, but Frank has been the only one that has sent me at least a dozen referrals personally. And the way that he does each of them by email were all personally written. And I really appreciated every single note that he attached to each of those emails. And Really, you guys listen to Frank, I imagine, hopefully consistently. And if not, please do. But overall, I really think that he is one of the most generous super connectors that I've met out of the 69. So you guys are all on the right place and the right podcast. And if you haven't had a conversation with him, definitely have one. He's great.
Well, I really appreciate that. That was, I didn't pay for that. That was not scripted. Thank you.
I'll send you an invoice after, Frank.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.